A very active weather pattern will lead to several winter storms as we push through at least the first couple weeks of February. This is going to be induced by crazy temperature swings that will continue for quite a while. This video has the full breakdown on anything from those temperature swings to the winter storms, so stick around for all the details. Thank you for taking time out of your day to tune into this video. If my voice sounds a little bit weird from what you usually hear, it's because I am sick right now. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and push right into the national notes to begin this video, a new segment that I'm going to begin every video with for the first minute or two, talking about an overview of something that's really going to show and impact the entire weather pattern. In this case, we're using the European Ensemble blended guidance to show you temperature anomalies as we push through the next 10 to 14 days across the country. And overall, what's being anticipated as we push ahead into this week is crazy contrast between especially the northern and the southern U.S., and it starts building especially as we go towards Tuesday and Wednesday. Look at this big area right here being indicated by this ensemble guidance. This right here from Texas and Oklahoma over to parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. Points in between indicating temperatures at least 20 degrees above average being expected. Some spots getting closer to 30 to 40 degrees above normal, with temperatures as high as the 60s and 70s trying to make a run out of places like Arkansas and Tennessee and even into points further north. Meanwhile, back on over to the northwest U.S., cooler than average, and you're going to notice that we're going to continue to see pushes of cooler than average air working towards warmer than average air. That's going to happen once again. You can see warm air trying to resurge north after a brief cool down into parts of the northern and eastern U.S. by the time we go towards Saturday into Sunday, but there's more cold air that's well below average, even for this time of the year, back on up into the northwest and north central plains. And guess what? That pushes up against the warm air again, and eventually we continue seeing the cold and warm air line pushing a little bit further south, and that's likely going to mean several winter storms in the interaction zones, and that track of the winter storms will also shift south as a result of this likely by the time we push deeper into February, say towards the 10th and afterwards. Alright, with our national notes in mind, let's go ahead and push into an overview of the precipitation pattern for the next 10 days using this European model. I'll break down the near term and then the longer range pattern in more detail right after this, but I just want to start with a broad overview of what you can expect in various parts of the country with that pattern I just showed you, aligning up with the temperature changes. Starting off here just in the near term as we push into the beginning of this week, looking dry and warming up, of course, for a lot of zones as you push down here towards the southern corridors of the U.S., anywhere from the central plains all the way over to the east coast, dry into our Monday, February 3rd, but where we're going to be watching consistent moisture is with low pressures continuing to push into the west and bringing snowfall there, as well as some of the snow that we're going to have riding the northern tier of the country, really anywhere from Oregon through the far northern parts of the plains like the Dakotas and Minnesota, and then over into Michigan, points in between. Watching a chance for snowfall through our Monday afternoon. Some of that snow that's in Michigan and Wisconsin bringing some light to moderate accumulations Monday. We'll push into the northeast as we go overnight Monday into Tuesday, and all during this time frame, even by the time we push into our Wednesday morning, continuing to watch a slew of low elevation rain, and then snow as you push up into the higher elevations of the mountains out west. That's going to be a persistent theme. Of course, check weather.gov for your specific forecast for no matter what elevation you're at out there into the west. And eventually one of those systems in the west is going to trigger our first larger scale winter storm, I think, as we go towards around Wednesday night, and then into Thursday over parts of the northern and northeastern U.S. Looks like we could be watching rain, maybe even some thunderstorms as far north as the Ohio Valley with that southerly wind flow that's going to come with this first winter storm around February 5th into February 6th into those zones. A chance for ice and snow, which I'll break down in more detail here in just a minute, could break out over a large part of the northern Ohio Valley region, moving into the northeast parts of the Great Lakes and then back into the Midwest. Eventually, more of that snow pushes through some areas of New England. That system's out of here, but just to show you what I'll break down in more detail here in just a minute, there's another winter storm that looks likely a little bit further south towards around the 8th or the 9th, and then look at where the next one could be after this. I know this is a long way out and it's just speculation, but it looks like even as far south as Kentucky, Tennessee, you might not be done with winter storm chances just because we're warming up this week. By next week, things could be in a full different story, and again, I'll have more details on that in just a minute, but let's give you a quick breakdown on the early to midweek snow for this week. Alright, here we are looking at that near-term snowfall before we get any of those larger-scale winter storms that will cross really a lot of the country by the time we go towards the middle to the back half of this week. Let's look at the forecast snow totals by the time we go from our Sunday evening when I'm recording this through Wednesday, February 5th in the evening. Of course, the big winners by this point in time, even in some coastal areas, it's going to be back here into the Pacific Northwest region of the U.S. You can see Northern California through parts of Oregon and Washington, and then over into Idaho, Montana, Northwest Wyoming going to be the big winners with a lot of those snow totals. Whether you're you're looking at the potential of flooding like we could see down there, especially in some of the lowest valleys there in California, or if you're looking at that high elevation snowfall, again, make sure that you're checking weather.gov for those location-specific alerts that we could have, even including wind out here in these zones, as feet of snow will occur in those pinks and turquoise shades in those highest elevations. And then over here, whether it's falling here in the next 24 hours or over the next 72 hours, looking like a broad stripe of areas picking up an additional 1 to 3 inches of snow, some spots getting more on top of what's already been going on with recent clippers up here from parts of the north central plains into the Great Lakes, including Michigan, and then on over here into the northeast. Not really anything lake enhanced. Most of this just coming with the stripes of snow themselves, as they're going to be making their way on in fairly quickly from west northwest to the east southeast, even trying to push briefly there towards the coast of places like Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. With all the early week stuff out of the way, now let's talk about those bigger signals for more expansive areas of the country by the time we go out of Wednesday and Thursday and beyond, with several winter storms likely. This GFS ensemble guidance factors in multiple pieces of guidance, and this is going to give you a good idea of where signals are for areas to see snow, ice, or rain and severe weather as we push with time. Let's start with this first system, the one that I was showing you on that overview with the European model. This is your blended guidance, giving you an idea of what to expect as we go into Wednesday night with our next big low forming here into the eastern and northeastern parts of the country. First of all, one thing I'm going to say about this storm is that there is going to be a likely issue in terms of snowfall for many zones, as we're going to see warmer air trying to push northward. The most out of any system we're expected to see as we go through this first couple weeks of February, really making an impact on the storm. And that's likely going to push your ice all the way through this general zone that I'm circling right here, causing a big area of expansive freezing rain issues that continues pushing to the north into areas that may even start as snowfall going out of Wednesday night into Thursday morning. That's going to be an issue even on up there into some parts of the interior northeast zones. Only areas with uninterrupted snow expected out of this event into Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan. Again, you can see other areas filling in with those pinks as we go through the day on Thursday. And because of that warm air, we're also going to have to watch some level of a threat for severe weather with any storms along our cold front side of the storm. Still warm air out ahead of that cold front, and that could lead to some severe weather somewhere here into the Ohio Valley. Isolated severe weather in the form of hail, gusty winds, maybe a tornado or two could be possible out of this, and that's something I'll touch on more in detail in a future update, I'm sure. Either way, it looks like this system is just going to bring some isolated rain to other areas. Notice again, ice pushing as far north as Maine out of this as it caps off Thursday night into Friday. And then we're on to the next one from there, which your next signal begins sometime around the end of the 8th into the 9th. This looks like it could bring a similar situation where we have the ice line somewhere here between your rain and your snowfall, but our snow might be a little bit further south and be able to last a little bit longer here before we try to see any sort of transitions anywhere from parts of northern Illinois and parts of Wisconsin and Michigan, all the way on over here into southern New England. Again, the further we go out, these are just broader signals, but it does look like initially here at these first couple of winter storms, we're noticing them further north. And then look at what happens by the time we get our next bigger signal, sometimes around the 10th to the 12th of February. This is very broad, indicating a general spread in our guidance anywhere from the central to the eastern U.S., but one thing's for certain in this agreement, wherever we have a winter storm, which I'm pretty confident we will somewhere in this time frame, snow could be as far south as maybe even Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, over to the mid-Atlantic points in between, including the Ohio Valley. So we could see more of a shift, especially from that second winter storm signal that I just showed you to this one, where we see our snow and ice line tracking a lot further south. I'm telling you, we're going to be watching plenty of winter weather to come, and it's going to shift south with a big cool down and Arctic blast that's going to continue to push out of the northern U.S. and begin shifting southeast as we go deeper into February. But anywhere that we're looking at right here is La La Land towards the 17th and 18th, for example. But with that being said, I want to give you an overview of some custom graphics I've made for you here showing where those snow tracks are going to be and a recap of everything I just showed you and what you need to know for the next 10 days in terms of winter weather across the country. This does not factor in ice. I showed you some of those zones that could be impacted by ice, especially in the near term. But here we go. First winter storm signal, that one for Wednesday night into Thursday, that especially could have some ice issues towards the bottom areas of these blue zones. Origin zone back into the northwest for this system, and then watching especially along that Canadian border some snow out of this very northerly tracking system. The next one around February 8th and 9th looking like it could be further south, including areas from parts of South Dakota through maybe Minneapolis, Minnesota, into parts of Madison down to Milwaukee there in Wisconsin, getting on the verge of maybe some snow, or at least starting out with some possibly before we maybe turn to an ice event in a place like Chicago. That's just an early assumption on what we could see there. Detroit, you could be in the crosshairs of snow by February 8th through 9th. Same goes down here with some decent accumulation possible into a lot of the northeast U.S., maybe even closer to the coast. and the maybes just grow even more by this point in time. But from around February 10th through 13th, this goes to show you what I've been trying to show you with those trends on the guidance. Looks like maybe even as far south as the South Central Plains, or at least the Central Plains, over to the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and the I-95 corridor there in the Northeast. By this point in time, if it hasn't happened already, now your snow track could be shifting south enough that these zones get that best chance for a big-time snow event. I'm telling you, winter's not over, and it is going to be crazy tracking all these systems that are showing up big time on the model trends for the next at least couple of weeks, possibly even beyond then. No matter which way you slice it, though, we've got some crazy temperatures going on across the country here in the near term, and that's what I want to finish this video talking about, those warmer than average anomalies, especially for what we're going to be seeing as we go from Monday through at least Wednesday to Thursday of the week ahead. Look at these forecasted temperatures into tomorrow. This is your Monday, February 3rd into the afternoon National Digital Forecast Database, indicating in any of these boxed zones down here into the southwest four corners and then over into Texas where we're looking at 70s and 80s. Record-breaking high temperatures being projected. Some areas there around Abilene into Texas, up there to Wichita Falls, even towards Oklahoma City, upper 70s into the low to mid 80s here. That's going to be definitely record-breaking heat, as these numbers are very uncommon for February. And this is just less than 2 weeks after we were seeing teens and 20s in some of these zones, and that's what makes this even crazier. Further to the east, even as far north as this line, looking at temperatures around 60, and then warming up in points south from Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, and then down here into places like Kentucky, Tennessee, parts of Missouri, and Arkansas. 70 to 75 in a lot of these zones, 75 to 80 as you get closer to the Gulf Coast. Meanwhile, the far northern U.S., with those Clipper systems moving through during the early part of this week, staying more towards the single digits and teens, just, hundreds of miles north from Kansas, where it's going to be in the 70s. We're in the single digits and teens with snow as we go through the early part of this week. Notice a little bit further south of our cooler, at least into Tuesday, 70s and 80s still likely down here, especially over this broad corridor of these states that either border Mexico or down here into the Gulf states. By the time we go out of Tuesday into Wednesday, yet another warm day being projected with all of those numbers that have the boxes around them, indicating that record warmth being projected. A lot of 77s, a lot of 78s, a lot of 79s and 80s being expected here from central Texas over into northern Louisiana, parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia for our Wednesday afternoon. And then by Thursday, this is where we see, I think this could creep northward even a little bit more. Some of this warmth that we get up here with 50s, 60s trying to make their way into the Ohio Valley, that could be just enough to support whatever storms we get out of that first winter storm I'm tracking to bring some severe weather here. It's going to be drier, but we're still going to be looking at plenty of 70s and 80s down here towards the Gulf Coast and the southeast U.S. All this while, though, watching a more cold, and this is only going to deepen as we go deeper into February. For this point, though, around Thursday afternoon, at single digits and teens on up here in the north central U.S. Thursday afternoon, 30s into parts of the northeast. Here we go again, though. Just like January, it looks like the month is going to increasingly get more active here, at least as we go through the middle part of February, with that active winter weather pattern coming as we recap those headlines that I just talked about in this video, in addition to the active winter weather pattern that's going to be coming. With each winter storm that we get, it looks like the snow and ice line will trek south. I'll be keeping you updated on all of that. The fact that we're going to be looking at the crazy cold and snow continuing for areas out west, I'll be timing those out as we get to the near term of all of those snowfall events. Of course, we're also going to be warmer and rainy, maybe even some severe weather towards the southern side of all these winter weather systems. A lot to track, and I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button right down below. I keep saying this in all my videos, but we're getting real close to 10,000 subscribers. If you want consistent, accurate weather content without all the crazy hype and clickbait, make sure you're hitting that button down below. Check out the link in the description to Weather Bell, and I'll see you right here next time at
One Nation Weather.